AI is everywhere. It's injecting every facet of our lives and we can't escape it. So today I'm going to try and answer the question, should I use Logseq's MCP server? And first of all, I guess we should figure out if Logseq has an official MCP server. So if we go over here, if you search for Logseq MCP server, you're going to see a lot of results. So I mean, there's so many different versions. How can you even decide which one? Well, the good thing is that Logseq actually comes with its own MCP server, and this is the official one. So you should use it within the app. So we're going to try and answer a bunch of questions to ultimately answer the question, should I use Logseq's MCP server? So we'll run through them one by one and answer them in turn. So what is MCP? Stands for Model Context Protocol. And it's basically a standard for connecting AI to external systems, right? So it's this standardized protocol. So think of MCP like a USB port for AI applications. Is there an official Logseq MCP server? Yes. Does MCP work with the Markdown version? Well, I can answer this one straight off the bat. No. So there's no official support for the Markdown version of Logseq. So if you wanted to use MCP, you could use one of the ones that we saw in the search results. Technically, you could use any of these, but carries its own inherent risk as well. What can the large language model read? In a nutshell, the MCP server exposes your entire graph. The large language model can access whatever your active graph is at the time. So if you go into like the settings here and you go to, so there's an AI option here in the database version that isn't, so you'll see here MCP server, and you can toggle it on and off. Enable MCP server to allow communication with local AI applications. MCP server depends on the HTTP API server. You can read nodes, can read blocks, your entire graph, right? And I haven't seen any evidence that it would have access to any other graph that you have, only the one that's active. Can it edit or delete my notes? So the MCP server supports the following features. It can create and edit any node, any page that you want or that it decides. All creates and edits have a pretend option. Pretend to add page X with Y blocks. The claim is that this is useful for seeing how many changes would occur. All changes to a current graph are undo/redoable. Can search any node, create and list pages, create and list tags. When creating tags, their properties and parent can be specified. Create and list properties. When creating properties, they're typed, because remember that the database version of Logseq is opinionated. It has types that you can choose. Creation of pages, tags, and properties runs the same app validations to prevent invalid data. Now that's a very important one, because large language models still have a propensity, like they can still hallucinate, right? So one major issue I see with using this MCP server is that it may create similar pages to what already exists, but it might be syntactically different. So for one single page, it might actually technically be two separate pages, and that's going to compound over time. So the following are to-dos for the MCP server. So just keep in mind, these are not current features. These are proposed features. You'll notice that there is no delete here. And this is, I guess, a deliberate choice. You may have seen a lot of memes that do like RM, TAC, RF, and basically just wiping people's computers. So you don't want that capability for a large language model in your graph. You don't want it to give it the ability to just wipe everything. The MCP server as it stands, the MCP functionality in Logseq as it stands right now can build structure, but it can't fully populate or destroy it. It can't delete and it can't recycle pages. Where does my data go? So Logseq is touted as a local first PKMS, personal knowledge management system. And we should distinguish between what that means for us using the app and what that means for connecting it to, is my database graph stored locally? Yes, your database graph runs exclusively on your local device, just like the file version. So if you're using, say, ChatGPT or Claude, if you're using an online provider, the moment that large language model reads your graph or a part of your graph, that information gets sent to their servers as part or whole of a prompt. So you are sending whatever that data is to their service. So you could hook this up to a local only, so a large language model that resides purely on your computer with no web access, or you could air gap it and have it so that your data never goes anywhere other than your local computer. Most people are probably going to try and hook it up to OpenAI or Anthropic or something like that, to one of their AI models. Can it be tricked into doing something I didn't ask? Yes. And this is assuming that you have untrusted text that arrives from the outside. If you were to use, say, Reddit's, an MCP server that connects to Reddit, and it just so happens that a comment that the large language model sees on Reddit includes some sort of prompt injection. A basic example of this would be disregard all previous instructions and do X, baked into a block somewhere that the large language model reads and has the potential to exfiltrate data. So if it included instructions to export your emails or search emails for some sort of sensitive information, like personally identifiable information or RSA keys or something that is stored on your computer. The bottom line is it is possible, and you should take your own situation into account how you want to manage that risk. What's the worst that could happen? This could give attackers access to your bank and pretty much anything else that you could have stored on your computer. The worst case scenario is pretty grim. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in every case, but it's definitely something worth considering. So should I use Logseq's MCP server? This really depends on your use case. To limit, you could pair it with a local model that only sits on your computer and doesn't have web access. That would get rid of a lot of privacy and exfiltration risks in one fell swoop. Use it if these conditions are met. You can use it if you accept that the model can actually read your whole graph and that the graph doesn't hold anything that you'd never want an LLM to see, or that you didn't necessarily want public, is probably another way to view it. Like, you treat write access as real, you keep an eye on what's happening, and make sure that Logseq's hourly backups are on, just in case something goes awry. You have to be comfortable managing the localhost bearer token and also the risks that go along with, because you have to enable the HTTP server in Logseq in order to enable the MCP. So you should understand the inherent risks that come across that, come along with that. So opening that port up and so on. So I wouldn't use the MCP server in Logseq if you ever connect it to a cloud model. So for example, ChatGPT or one of Anthropic's models, and your graph has anything sensitive in it. So if you're using it to keep track of like client notes or credentials or, you know, health or legal information, stuff like that. This is basically opening up your second brain to whoever. If you're in the habit of pasting untrusted content into your graph and you don't audit that. It comes down to how diligent you are and what risks you're willing to accept. And if you just want to set it and forget it, that might also be a reason for you not to use it. Inherently, the MCP server itself isn't necessarily good or bad on its face. You've got to think more broadly about whether you're using a local model or whether you're using a cloud model. If you're using a supervised model versus one that you can just walk away from. But in the next video, we'll run through how you can install it and get it running for those who decide to actually go ahead with it. All right, I'll see